Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. You're listening to another episode of Conversations with Rudy Rivera that you can find on LinkedIn. I would ask you to go to my YouTube channel, Conversations with Rudy Rivera, and subscribe. And I hope you enjoy tonight's conversation. I'm thrilled to have as my guest Şirin. And Şirin, you're going to have to pronounce your last name for me.
Şirin Köprücü. Hello, everyone.
Okay, and Shirin is a life coach. She has been a life coach for a number of years. And one of the things I found interesting about and why I wanted to have her on my show is her theory behind coaching, which is really boils down to one word, right? Curiosity.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your background first, and then we'll get into the topic.
Thank you very much, Rudy. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this space. I as soon as I saw your space, I fell in love with it because I think our mutual interest in curiosity basically shows up through these conversations. And I'm joining from Chevy Chase, Maryland today. I've been in the United States for over 22 years now, if we include my graduate studies, the period of that. I'm originally from Turkey. Köprücü, my last name means bridge builder. And I'm living my last name, married last name. And I've been building bridges across cultures, first through my international career in the pharmaceutical industry, and then as a leadership development specialist, specializing in global mindset development.
Well, you say, what if we were curious, right? What if you're curious? How does that help you in work? How does being help you?
And I was thinking, really, maybe we should also begin with what is curiosity, right?
Go ahead.
Does anything else than words show up for you when I say curiosity?
For me, curiosity is I want to know more. There's a negative connotation with curious, as he always wants to know, he's nosy, that type of stuff. But there's the academic, intellectual curiosity where you talk about, well, I want to learn things. Mm-hmm. And when I want to learn whatever it is I can learn.
Yeah.
That's my view of curiosity.
I want to learn things. Definitely related curiosity and learning. And today, many organizations that want to advance have really enabled learning for their employees. For me, curiosity personally is so special. I imagine a cupcake when I say curiosity. I start hearing interesting tunes when I say curiosity, and curiosity is asking questions, wondering about something, and also somewhere it's a wisdom. It's a wisdom on the other end of the spectrum. Like one end is probably traditional thinking, and the other end is the wisdom of curiosity. What if?
But how does that relate to somebody at work? Okay, it's one thing that you're a student, you're a curious mind, but in terms of life coaching and executive coaching, how does that help you at work?
Yeah, so I got very interested in curiosity. Probably, I'm going to say now, about 7-8 years ago, when I started seeing e-commerce really show up in the workspace and digitalization, automation, and I started hearing from business leaders how things are changing rapidly. So I look at curiosity from two angles now. One, what does it mean in leadership? And in leadership, one, we're as soon as you're on the internet, you are global. Businesses are global very easily because of the progress in technology. So innovation can come from anywhere. Disruption can come from anywhere. Speed is fast. Speed is fast. So if what is the risk of not being curious in that?
Being stagnant, never growing, never developing, and being put out of business, right?
Right? Right? I mean, does do any businesses come to your mind?
BlackBerry,
Mm,
Blockbuster Video.
yeah. I couldn't believe when, like, as a young mom, not later, a little later probably, but when Toys R Us went away.
Yes, Toys R Us went away. Is Avocabri and French still open? Or
I
FAO
wonder.
Schwartz? Is FAO Schwartz still open? I mean, all those things really, all those industries failed to adapt. But, and I think, that's why I think this curiosity approach you have is really interesting, because I think the curiosity is, how can you be innovative constantly?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you become curious about is, how do you make your product better? How do you streamline your processes? And too many people, and BlackBerry is a good example, it had almost all the business. Now it's down to who knows what. I don't know if it's even measurable, because they thought they were on top of the world. They thought nobody can beat our technology. And look what happened. Steve Jobs demolished them. Okay. That's what happens. And what I see with Apple, I'm not necessarily a big Apple fan, because I think they have this planned obsolescence. You buy something and 6 months later, it's obsolete. Everyone wants to buy. A very ingenious way to market, but they're always innovating.
They're always innovating.
Always innovating. And they're a $1 trillion company now, right? It's the same thing.
And so the next question is, how does that happen? How do they always innovate? How are they not stagnant? So the way curiosity became also very important for me is in my latest journey as a leadership coach, or when I got certified as a coactive coach. The more I worked with clients, the more I could see the importance of curiosity in them becoming successful through coaching. And we'll talk probably more about coaching, but I can say that the value that a coach adds is creating the safe space to bounce off ideas, probably an inspirational space, that too. However, in that space, whatever the client will give to that space makes them really successful, because it ends up in self-discovery. The more self-discovery, the more end result. So what is a vision? What is the vision I can have about this? And so we really engage in that vision. Or how else can I look at a topic? We engage looking from different perspectives. So the more curiosity there is in leadership development, the more outcome too.
Well, put it in everyday terms, okay? A worker, somebody who's a worker that I want to advance in my company, explain how you would coach that person on how to act on his or her curiosity.
Right, yeah. So let's say they may come to me saying they want to be more collaborative, or they want to show up with more confidence. The question is, what does that look like? What does that look like? And if they only stay in their minds and say, well, this is what I have learned in this workshop and that course, and I see this other colleague, or I have this role model, I want to apply. Okay, can you connect well with it so you can internalize that, right? And to be able to look into that, we need to ask, okay, how do you envision yourself showing up with confidence? What is your impact going to be? What is your behavior going to be? And that results in the curiosity you expect someone, a learner, to be in.
We have a comment from Marcella that says, curiosity is the starting point of research.
Yeah.
So curiosity comes in two steps there. You want to learn how to do something new that no one's ever done, right? That's that curiosity. We want to get people on the moon. You know, if you look at Elon Musk with SpaceX, and people thought he was crazy, right? And even what's his name, Branson from the Virgin companies, and his space program. Now Jeff Bezos is in it, but somebody had to start it, you know. And then there's curiosity to learn things that already exist that you don't know. And that's, go ahead. That's what I think is most helpful to people in their job. Is be curious is to take on new skills. Take on skills that will help you grow. Too often people say, stick to what you know.
Our minds are built for that, to stick to status quo. We find comfort in that, and with comfort comes inertia.
Exactly. Comes inertia.
And stagnance with that, right? You can become easily very comfortable. Things are going well. Oh, we'll figure it out. Who knows if I'm going to be here 3 years down the road? There are all sorts of different reasons one can get very comfortable.
Well,
this is what I believe. That's the other one.
It's not my job.
Right? It's not my job.
Well, the reason I think, though, it's even more important now, because the days of having a job for 30 years with the same company is a thing of the past. Now, I think you're lucky if you can last 10 years, which means if you want to last a long time, you've got to be constantly curious and innovative.
And what are the factors do you see creating that situation?
I mean, what factors do I see creating that situation? I think people are afraid to fail. They're afraid to make a mistake. Sometimes the company has a culture of not encouraging. I know some companies that their mantra is action for or bias for action. And they want people to be entrepreneurial. For example, some companies, and I think somebody told me a while back, the Ritz-Carlton allowed workers a certain budget to plan innovative things. So the company has to have the mindset for you to do that. 3M was invented as two guys working together, one person, putting papers in this hymnal at church and they kept falling off, and this other person with the glue, they got together, and that's where Post-it notes came about, right? So the company has to have a culture of stimulating that. But people are often siloed today in their different areas, and they don't want to go outside that area. They don't want to learn new things.
Oh, that's a very interesting point as well. Like the more specialized they are, the way technology is progressing and the way jobs are shifting, possibly we're getting more specialist jobs. And the more specialized you are, the less you might be inclined to work across different specialties and all if there is no culture like that, right? Organizational culture definitely is very important for curiosity.
Well, I mean, it's not my job is a common expression, right? It's not my job. I don't have to do it. Rather than saying, yes, I'll do it, I'll learn it, But I also think, you can be over ambitious and, oh yeah, I can do it, and you really can't. But you just say, yeah, so you don't take the time to learn, right? And so that's could be one of the dangers to me, you have to attach curiosity with the desire to spend the time and effort to learn what it is you need to learn.
Yeah. And how do you think that evolves? Do you have any thoughts? Let me share a little bit from my experience. One thing I have learned is I was into global mindset development because the world was getting global and professionals needed to work well with each other across cultures and all. And so we learned global mindset to work well with each other from different cultures or with people unlike us. You know, in an organization, even teams have different cultures or divisions, right? At the same time, research showed that kind of a mindset is correlated with creative and courageous mindset because it increases, for instance, with travel, with experiencing intercultural stuff, like by going to a restaurant or to a museum or having a conversation with someone who is unlike you. And as you do that, suddenly you start getting ideas that you've never had before. You hear perspectives and somehow it gives you a spark for imagination. And you start applying that in your life. So a good example is just eating. Like we eat with dishes here, maybe, but we eat with chopsticks elsewhere. Maybe we eat with our hands. How does that happen? Suddenly we enjoy eating in different ways.
Well, I think though, if you look at somebody's going to do business with the Japanese the first time, he should be curious as to what do the Japanese do? How do you approach them? Just rather than going there, this is what I'm going to sell them, and this is what I'm going to do. They should adapt to my way of thinking. So part of being curious is learning, and then also from that learning, being able to adapt.
Absolutely. And I've seen there's a great parallel between global mindset development and leadership development today. The level of curiosity leaders need today, such as being able to work with multidisciplinary teams, people unlike you, marketing with engineering, computer science, right? How did Airbnb develop? How did Uber develop? How do now driverless cars develop? Like, it's just a lot of imagination. And that, as I mentioned, when we travel, we see such unexpected, interesting stuff. So our brains start developing to notice unexpected stuff. And then on top of that, if we are interested in arts and we're painting something we see, again, our brains start learning unexpected stuff. We become more creative. I also think that we, as travelers, you learn to travel smartly, and so you learn to make some strategic decisions, which is also very important in today's world. Because I was working with entrepreneurs, and they're saying, you know, we're working on this AI project now, but we're really not sure if somebody in India is also working on the same project. So the lifetime of our entrepreneurial idea may be only 18 months.
Okay. But how would you, I'm interested in, if I come to you and I say, you know what, Shirin, I'm in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do. I don't like my job. I don't like my boss. Okay. How are you going to patch in curiosity to me so I can make at least my professional life for that moment much better? How do you apply it when you have a client and you say, well, these are the steps you should try to follow? What would you tell them? I realize that you as a coach, you ask questions and elicit the responses from them. But at some point, you give them advice in the sense, how do you start with that?
Right. I mean, the situation you're describing is an interesting situation. Coaches come with their specialties. And I tend to get clients who are curious about something. At the same time, I have met individuals who came to me where they said they're just simply not fulfilled. And so the way I notice that is how the energy is down, right? And so the way we will start that conversation is, what will bring your energy up? What would that look like?
Okay, what does it look like?
What does it look like for you, right? And also, first of all, listening. Do they need to let go of something that is sitting heavy in their heart? So also, if there is a lot of stress, simply listening as a coach helps learn about that stress. What is that stress based on? What are the stories? What are perspectives? What are some beliefs, the underlying beliefs? And then exploring what experiences those beliefs are rooted in. And if the person possibly wants to let go of certain experiences that are not serving them. Maybe starting to say no to certain tasks and yes to others. Maybe yes to some projects that they will excite them. But how can they make themselves visible for those projects, right? And so maybe they decide to, whatever they're doing now, and at the same time start making themselves visible for certain projects that will excite them. At the same time, is the energy loss happening in their workspace only, or is it also in their personal space? And so we ask our clients to come with the full picture. Everything is confidential, so that they can really get very curious about what is happening in their space and what they want to dream of. They can dream of anything. I have seen that just by imagining things. You have it written in the background: dream big, aspirational goals, diverse collaborations, and effort on the side of the client can make them make leaps.
We have another question from Marcella. Should teachers encourage curiosity from childhood so that we can have creative professionals?
That's exactly what my thoughts are, Marcella. Working now in this professional space with coaching, and also having raised two kids my own, I am glad that I have encouraged my kids to be very busy with arts, have arts in their lives, music, performing arts, lots of hiking, nature, time in the nature, and lots of travel, and curiosity in languages. They both speak Turkish, as well as one speaks Spanish and the other one speaks French. We're always curious about the language that we're going to walk into wherever we're traveling. So now we're headed to Italy. We want to practice some Italian. And yes, how does this exactly then contribute to their creativity? For instance, in a coaching session, is we can tap into those experiences. When was a time when you felt really energetic? What was happening then? When was a time? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
No,
I can get going about this.
No. When you look at a 2-year-old, for example, who is constantly running around, looking at stuff, babies putting hands in their mouth, feet in their mouth, discovering their body, looking all over the place, that's the curiosity you're born with, right? At some point, it starts to die down when you get hit with all these societal rules about do what you know. So I would think, Shirin, that one advice that would be valuable for somebody is learn something new every day. Learn something new about your job or something that's ancillary to your job so that A, you can get better at your job, right? And B, it'll open up more horizons. I've known a number of people, including myself, who have changed careers several times. Not necessarily intentional, but because in my world, I was curious about things. You know, things happen. I say, I want to learn more. Let me see if I can do this. The flip side of it, I think, is you have to say, yeah, I can do this, rather than saying I can't. It's one thing to be curious, but another thing to say to yourself, I can't do this. And that's where self-sabotage comes in. So it's not enough to be curious. I think you have to act on that curiosity.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's where one needs to be really evaluating self. Am I able to act on this on my own, or should I partner with somebody? And this doesn't have to be a coach. It could be somebody who has interest in the same thing, a colleague, a team, a learning circle. All you need to do is to get out there and say, hey, I'm curious about this. I'm curious about acting on this. Who else is interested? Of course, there may be all sorts of different ways you ask this question in the professional life.
Exactly. But and collaborating with other people only enhances your knowledge.
Yeah.
Always enhances. Yes.
What you have a topic on it? One interview I was listening to, I cannot exactly remember who was in the interview, but the topic was solar panels being produced in China. Like, I think they were saying 85% of solar panels being produced in China. So, and then they were asking what different perspectives can we take on this? We could clearly say they should not be producing all solar panels, or should another perspective was they can produce all solar panels because they clearly have a advantage over that. Why don't we do something else? But something like this, where you might be stuck in one perspective, take it out there, take the topic out there and say, I would love different perspectives on this. What are your thoughts? What is everybody's thoughts?
Well, you say is that curiosity is the best skill you can acquire in this global world. And see, I don't know that people look at curiosity as a skill. That's another reason why I was interested in talking to you about this, because curiosity is just wanting to know things. But I don't know, until I started talking to you, I can see where it's a skill that you have to develop.
What would you say, you are an in-house counsel, how is it relevant, do you think, to the career growth of the in-house counsel? What keeps them back from curiosity? What would encourage?
Oftentimes people get siloed.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have an opportunity to interact with other people. And also there are people who don't want to interact. They just go do their job and they go home. So my advice to some of my colleagues is always network, which means be curious about meeting other people.
Mm-hmm.
Take colleagues in different areas to lunch. Get to know them. Always volunteer for projects. If they're asking for volunteers, say, I will do it. Participate in company extracurricular activities. If there's a company picnic, go there and be a face. Be a face show your face so they remember you. Because what happens when it comes time to deliver the pink slip, maybe your name won't be on that list, although no one ever has a guarantee. So that's what I would advise, my colleagues when they're in that. But it's amazing, though, how many of them are siloed. And this is your job. Your job is to review contracts, and that's it.
So that's really, really important, right? They need to consciously make a step towards curiosity, it sounds like, because they're siloed. And nobody tells them the importance of curiosity. What would be the impact of networking? Like, what is the value of networking for an in-house counsel?
It's extremely valuable. I mean, because as an inside counsel, your client is the company. And the more you know about your client, the company, the better you might be at negotiating an agreement, because you've had conversations with the business about the business. You know something about the business. I know when I look at an agreement, I've generally been asked to review the dispute resolution part of the agreement, but I always call and I say, okay, tell me the business motive. Tell me, is this important or not? But I always reach out. And so I think that's how you break the silo, is constantly reaching out and networking. Always volunteer to do stuff. You would be surprised, the type of exposure. I know somebody who became was a chief operating officer of a company, a very prominent company. And I can tell you, I've tracked some of his progression. And part of it was being involved in United Way activities or World Council activities. And he was seen and liked, and he was recommended. And that's the value of networking.
Yeah.
So there's curiosity about the subject matter, but there's also curiosity about people, because the more you learn about people, the more perspective you get. And it's very important to know how other people think.
Information flow can be faster. You can get information that you might not have access to because there's more trust through improved relationships. We also live in an era when there's big change and a desire for impact. So I'm curious about the role of in-house counsel, how it might be growing because of just change in industries. I mean, the way Uber, for instance, transformed the cab industry, and then there had to be a lot of legal considerations around Uber, right? And
Go ahead. Well, I mean, the best compliment they could pay you as an in-house counsel is, what do you think when it comes to business? Right? Not just the legal, what do you think? And there you become really more of a colleague than just a lawyer assigned to do a special task. That's the value of it. Okay, that's when you know that you network well into your company, that you're respected, and that they value your opinion. But you'd be surprised, in some companies, you're the lawyer, only speak when spoken to, and that's it. If we need you, we'll call you. And in other companies, I've seen lawyers are an integral part of the business decision-making process. And going back to your curiosity, it's those people who are doing that are successful took the time to learn the business, to learn about the business, how it works.
Imagine the lawyer is able to immediately say, well, this is what goes on in the different markets, right? These are the rules and regulations, and you can immediately feed back to other strategic decision makers, and you're a trusted advisor that way with your knowledge. Or at least you can say, I can call up this person. I know we will get the answer.
Right.
Or we should ask the perspective that we have that person. We should get that his perspective or her perspective on this.
True, and nowadays it's much easier to act on your curiosity. When I was studying, the only way you could learn something is from reading it on a book. I grew up, there were only three TV stations, and UHF came in afterwards. But now you have all this source of information at your fingertips.
at your fingertips. It's amazing.
Right. And it's easy to find out stuff within minutes. But one thing I like to do is something pops in my mind, I'll immediately go to Google, see what I can find and learn something about it. When I'm getting ready to meet with people, of course, I Google them. That's part of being curious. I don't want to go into a meeting just cold. Who am I dealing with? Who am I talking with? That's all the curiosity aspect of trying to be your best. I could say, oh, I'm going to meet this guy. I'm going to meet Fred Smith and not know anything about Fred Smith until I get there.
Yeah, and then how will you connect, right? And so we have platforms like LinkedIn where you can not only see the backgrounds of people, but you can also see their extracurricular activities, so to say. What are they interested in? Like what did they try to do? And perhaps there is a commonality there, and you can connect with someone over that. You could even collaborate. If the person may be interested in some sports or in school development or housing development.
And what would you say to somebody then? What's something that somebody should do every day to act on their curiosity?
That's a good question. And it's palatable, right? Having a daily goal like that is palatable. I love reading. So for instance, I make sure that I read all the news, different sources of news. I have certain newsletters I read. So having a goal like this, I'm learning about a topic that is not necessarily within my sphere. So I built a reading circle around that topic. And we hold each other accountable to read every 2 weeks about the same amount. So I break that up and read that way. What else? What else comes to mind when we...
Well, we have another question, and that is how to balance curiosity with productivity. That's a very good question.
How to balance curiosity with productivity, exactly. And that comes to time management probably a little bit, right? How do you want to manage your time to do what?
Well, I once, years ago, when I started working for the company, I heard the CEO at the time of McDonald's saying, I don't want people who have a vision. We got plenty of those. I want people who can execute on the vision. So to the point of this question is, you don't let that distract you from your work, but what you're learning is how to do things better, right? How to do that, you do the job better. Obviously, you're not going to spend 4 out of your 8-hour day and say, oh, I'm going to learn about this and you do it on your spare time. You maybe take, certain minutes of work. We're not talking about doing an intense amount of research. Sometimes it may be like that if you want to learn something new. But for me, it seems like learning little bits and pieces every day, trying to learn something new every day. So I'll read articles on things that interest me. Maybe I won't even read the whole article. I'll read, because, we have so much to read now. I'll read certain parts that sound interesting. And interestingly, even at my age, as old as I am, they still stick in my mind. And I can always go back to that.
And when you see something interesting, like when I see something interesting, I don't let it go. If I don't have the time, then I schedule it on my calendar to go back to it on a future date. So that way, when the day comes, it's on my calendar. Hey, Shirin, you have time. If you have time, you do go ahead, read this or listen to this podcast. And I may not listen to the whole podcast either. I may just, listen to what I want to learn. Or take a course, but at the times that work for you.
It's really a question of time management. But you still, at the end of the day, you still have to execute. You still have to do your job. You still have to produce.
Absolutely. There are definitely goals, and those goals might be moving in in the next 3 years, you might be doing this and this might be important, but in the next 5 years, something else might be important. So keeping those goals in eyesight is extremely important, of course.
But it's important to act on it.
Very important to act.
It's not enough just to say, oh, I'd like to know this, right? It's important to act on it, which means that you have to be very strategic about things you want to learn. I mean, there's learning about things for pleasure, and even then, those can help you professionally. But I think what we're referring to mostly is how to be curious in your professional life. Although being curious in your personal life can help your professional life, but how to be curious so that you can do your job better, you can be better at what you're doing, you can have more opportunities and provide more value to your company or your law firm, wherever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah. Imagine what skills you're using, and so what is your stress level, right? I think that's also really, really important. What is so there are some indicators on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your stress level? How would you like to see it improved? What does it depend on? Possibly there are some skills or areas that you can identify for improvement. If your job requires creativity, or if your organization or higher level directors appreciate creativity, how creative are you on a scale 1 to 10? How would you like to improve it? Would you like to improve it? And what does that look like? We can improve creativity, and it's exactly through curiosity. How collaborative do you feel, right? How easy is it for you to partner with others? Just be really honest to yourself. Mm-hmm.
In the legal world, we talk about thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that to the attorneys I work with. Think outside the box. Okay, this is how people look at it traditionally, but look at it a different way. Look at it from a different angle. Be curious about the solutions in a case. Not one case has a solution. Sometimes I think with outside counsel, they have a tendency to say, this is the strategy, this is it. And they don't stop and become curious and say, well, wait a minute. Maybe that's not right. Mm-hmm. Is there something else that I'm not thinking about? What is there someone else I should talk to? Should I get a second opinion? Should I get a third opinion? And that's how curiosity, in my mind, when you apply to a lawyer doing his job, I think it would be good. Because, look, always be curious when you're handling a case for your client.
And that really, it sounds like it's important to become aware that you may be looking at something just from one angle.
Exactly.
How do you build, that awareness? What in your life has, if I ask you, how did you become better at that, Rudy?
How do I become better at things?
At noticing the time to say, oh, okay, maybe I should look at this from a different perspective. Maybe there is a different way of looking at this.
Well, I've always been taught. I was taught by a very early age by a brother in the Catholic Church who always taught me aim high. Because if you don't make it, you might fall somewhere in the middle. But if you aim for the middle, you'll fall back at the bottom. So I always thought, well, I want to do something, and when my mind is important, being a lawyer is something I love. It's, passion, not just a job. But for me, it was always just I wanted to learn something new. I wanted to learn something, and I've learned many different things. I mean, I went from hanging out a small shingle and taking everything that comes under the sun, being an expert on international adoptions and immigration, now managing international litigation, doing also all kinds of different things. Because whatever you learn through curiosity, no knowledge is ever wasted. So, for example, you might say, what does international adoptions have to do with international litigation? It has a lot, because I had to go deep into those legal systems. I had to understand how they worked, So what? You're talking about, domestic issue, and now you're talking about commercial litigation, and it's the same process, right? Same types of courts. And so nothing you learn is wasted. So I don't think you can ever accumulate too much knowledge, even if it's not what your area is in. It's never wasted. At some point, you may be forced to, go back to that.
So what you're saying is when you keep learning different things, you may see parallels.
You will see parallels, and you will see things that you learn from one actually benefit you in some other way.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I gave a talk to a university in India, and they said, what's it like to be a lawyer? I said, well, to be a lawyer nowadays, you have to be tech savvy. So you have to know IT. You may not want to, but you have to learn it. And if you don't learn it, you fall behind.
And surely they hadn't thought that you would give that answer to them.
They would have thought somebody my age would, But yeah, I've had to be, tech savvy. I remember with my partners in my office, I paid $1,000 for a fax machine, and they were furious with me. And well, you just want to waste money. Hey, the moment the fax was installed, my partner got the first fax, and he's the one who used the fax machine more than ever. And my thinking is, well, we better get a fax machine because, the mail is not necessarily efficient anymore. And sometimes people want more communication. And that's just the fax. That was before internet and everything like that. So now, you have to be curious about technology if you're a lawyer. You have to be an IT person sometimes. You have to be savvy with that stuff.
And that's why I think
that's why curiosity helps. What were you going to say, Shirin?
Yeah, and you could easily hesitate to take on that new technology because possibly even your colleague's job might be on the line because you're taking on that new technology. We now live in an era, okay, if that can be done easier, what else can be done possibly by our team that could be helpful to the strategy of the organization?
Exactly. And you have to learn to innovate. I mean, I'm in a hotel room right now in Mexico City. I've got my iPad going. I've got you on the hotel Wi-Fi, praying that it doesn't give out, right? Because you know how unstable it can be. Looking at it through a second monitor. Otherwise, we couldn't have done this interview. I would have had to say, wait till I get to my office. But now you can do things on the fly instantaneously.
Absolutely.
We have another question, by the way. Curiosity is not always used for good. And that's from Marcella again. Nowadays, we find very creative ways to defraud. That's true.
Well, hacking is also curiosity.
Well, it's curiosity for good or bad. I mean, you can make money two ways. You can work hard and earn, or you can rob a bank, or you can embezzle people on Bitcoin.
Absolutely. So in all this, I see this as a Luna Park, right? Is that the right word? Or fun fair? Like there's all sorts of curiosity now around the world, and we can utilize the creativity from all around the world. What is really important is, what matters most. And for that matter, really talking with different kinds of people. If it's your life, it's your life. As we bring up our children in this world of social media and everything, what is this? What are the smart choices to make as we raise kids? If it's professional life, what is in the future of the business? And what are unexpected trends that can come? How can they influence our business? and being really aware of that so that we are mobilizers rather than people who hold back. And for that matter, being able to really work with others, being able to look from their listening skills. So the importance of listening skills is always highlighted. And then truly be interested, like when we hear things in the news or suddenly we feel like we want to do woodwork, we want to learn woodwork, or we want to learn, we want to become a marathon runner. Go and explore yourself, because there is something in your body, there's some sort of talent that is coming out, and who knows what the impact of that will be to the rest of your life. And so that's the natural curiosity that we also need to nurture.
But I want to have some takeaways for this, because we're at about 8:50 right now. And what I've gathered from our conversation is, number one, be curious. Okay. Have curiosity. Two, act on that curiosity. Third, balance it with productivity. You still have to do the work. And three, that's actually four, maybe three. You have to be able to use technology to acquire the information. And everything you learn is transferable. It's never wasted in some form or another. So you're not going to learn stuff just necessarily to learn it, although some people do because they're perpetual students. I've had students in my international law class who are 75 years old, and it's their fourth degree because they want to constantly learn, and that's their hobby. But you should always try to be better at your profession by trying to learn, be better at your job by trying to learn. So I think those are the takeaways we have from this thing. And from a practical point of view, what I would advise people is just learn as much as you can about something.
Because you can, that's what will get you creative. If you just learn whatever you need to learn to do a job well, that's great. You know, you can get really good at it, but will that get you creative? Possibly not as much as if you can look at that job from different perspectives, if you experience other things, and then you see resemblances between them. You can build bridges between those resemblances or differences. Right? When you examine something from different languages, for instance, you gain a much better understanding of, like, let's say we were talking about the relationship, for instance. What are relationships like in the US? What are relationships like in Japan, in France? And if we had a discussion around relationships like that, we would develop a much deeper understanding of the capacity of relationship, right?
Well, we have a humorous comment from Roberto Santana. And if you're not a cat, try to retain. If you're not a cat, and if you're a cat, try to refrain from curiosity. Remember, curiosity killed the cat. But I respond to that by saying, but satisfaction brought him back.
You were saying.
A cat has 9 lives. I saw that in my law practice with my 2 older partners who just never wanted to learn anything new. They just stuck to what they knew. And as they got older, their sources for business died because they got old too, or they retired. And when I said, hey, I think I want to do these things, they said, oh my God, you're going to get a suit. Don't do what you know. And for a while, it became the lifeblood of the firm, where their business died, my business, went up. But if you imagine if I would have said, nope, I'm not doing that. And from that, I learned much, much more. I always did international work, but I learned much more about the inner workings of the international world doing that. But to look at it on a resume or paper from one to the other, we don't want this guy. That's the way it goes. Well, Do we have any final questions from our audience?
And then I think I would also like to add it to the takeaways. I think you gave some really good takeaways. What I would, shall I add the two things that I
Yes.
have in my mind?
Yes, absolutely.
One, in getting curious about things, remember, one can get curious easier with others. So if it's a topic that is challenging to you, or it's somehow far, let's say engaging with others is far, talk about it with others. Don't shy away from talking about it with others, and hang out with those who have great conversations and listen and observe, I would say. Or build a reading circle, for instance, about a topic that you, if it's AI, the impact of AI, build a diverse group around it. And then the last thing is, yes, build a partnership with a coach if it comes to that, because what happens with a coach is you can have a psychologically safe space where you can throw out all sorts of thoughts. You can share your imagination, and the coach will listen and notice when you may be stuck in perspectives. And you may not even be aware that you're stuck. Like, oh, when you said that, your voice went down. What was that about? Right? So coaches don't only listen to words, but the body language as well. And the last thing is, in a coaching relationship, you talk about complexity with simplicity through metaphors, for instance. So there are all sorts of techniques. What does speaking up at a meeting feel like to you? Where else in your life have you experienced it? Well, it's like me wanting to be the lead of my theater company, or me wanting to really belong to the sports team. Okay, so can we build bridges between those and you becoming more vocal at work, for instance?
I think those are the great final words. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank my Zoom audience, my LinkedIn audience. We got great thanks, Shirin, for Marcella. Great conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Conversations with Rudy Rivera. Reach out to Shirin on her LinkedIn page. And she's easy to find on LinkedIn. So feel free to find her and reach out to her. And I would say that Shirin is one of the life coaches designated, or executive coaches designated by the Association of Corporate Counsel. She attends all the corporate counsel meetings, annual meetings every year, and provides free consultation to a number of the in-house members. And so ACC, I'm sure, is very appreciative for that. But again, I want to thank everyone for showing up. Be posted for the next one, which will be very legal. It's called the attorney-client privilege in the different parts of the world. Something totally different than curiosity. So if you're curious about the attorney-client privilege throughout the world, tune into my channel. With that, I'll say goodbye to my LinkedIn audience and stop streaming. Hello, I am Rudy Rivera. To you and my friends all over the world, welcome to my YouTube channel, Conversations with Rudy Rivera. Please click subscribe, and you will have access to many, many more interesting interviews with interesting guests on interesting topics. Don't forget, subscribe. I will see you later.